This is Eleanor. Eleanor's my 1956 oval Beetle, which has been chopped. You see the width of her fenders. They're 4.5 inches wider on each side. This is the reason why I need a wider rear suspension. The wheels that are in there, they're like way sucked in. It just looks stupid. It just looks really dumb. So I needed to come up with a way to push that wheel out. The fenders are approximately 4.5 inches wider than stock. So if I move that measurement down to the wheel, that means I need to move the wheel out approximately 4.5 inches. With that said, knowing that I had to widen the rear suspension, I got a bunch of different kinds of trailing arms here. I got a couple different types of Beetle trailing arms, a couple different types of Porsche rear trailing arms, and a few different brake configurations, and I'm trying to find out which was not only the best size to fit my application, but also to figure out which one weighed the least. Because a lot of people said some weird things online, so I'll be doing a follow-up video to this one, where we're going to measure each one of these, and the results might be rather surprising to you, so go ahead in the comments here and post your opinion. Which do you think is going to be the lighter one? The steel arms, the aluminum arms, you know, maybe the aluminum's heavier? Tell me what you think, give your opinions, and we'll follow up with another video next week. So I got a set of Porsche 944 trailing arms, which are known to be wider than the Volkswagen Beetle part, but I still need an extra inch. So where am I going to get it from? I came up with a solution. A factory Porsche 1-inch spacer. Yes, Porsche actually makes these. This one is an aftermarket copy, as I wasn't about to pay Porsche prices for it like I did for everything else. But I'll have to get some longer studs, and I have them. But this is a hub-centric spacer. And what that means, and you can see inside of there, you see how the hub comes inside of the spacer? This centers the wheel and the hub perfectly. It doesn't depend on the lugs to hold that wheel perfectly straight. Everything has been machined appropriately on a lathe, so that way the wheel will then fit over this. This was a certain Porsche size, I forget what it is, 74.6 millimeters or some shit like that. It allows you to mount that wheel on here and keep it perfectly centered on the hub, not relying on the lugs to center that wheel. Because these things can be a little wonky, they can be bent, you know, things are never perfect, but this keeps it perfectly centered. This is the right way to do it. And yes, as I said before, Porsche makes these on OEM cars. It's not an adapter. Adapters and spacers are not the same thing. Spacers do nothing but space. Adapters actually put studs in here, or screws or bolts or some other method that gives you more lug nuts per wheel and more likely that they're going to break. This is an adapter. You notice the difference right away that it has studs mounted in it. They do thread into this. Some of them do have them pressed in. But the big difference is the initial hub nuts or studs that you have hold the adapter on, and then the wheel is held on by these. So this becomes an intermediary. And these are prone to getting cracked, or even for the studs pulling out of them, because in most cases they're just lightweight aluminum, and that's what this one is. So I would not trust this. Spacers are much better. The only thing that this does is take up space. Coincidentally, this adapter is actually for 4x130 Volkswagen late model Beetle lug pattern. It has a 5x130 Porsche pattern, so this is actually how you put the Porsche wheels onto a late Beetle. That is how I got the Porsche wheels onto this Beetle, using those adapters. But they're for crap. I've already had one come apart, so we're not going to be using those. In addition, this adapter is not hub-centric. So if I fit it over a Porsche hub, see how this doesn't stay centered? It's going to rely on those lugs to keep this thing straight. So if any of those lugs is a little out of alignment or a little crooked or a little bent, that wheel's going to have a wobble in it. So I don't like adapters. Adapters suck. These are only used temporarily to get the car to the car show. Alright, there it is. I've got to slip a jack stand under it yet to be sure that everything doesn't fall down on my head. But there's the late model 944 trailing arm. I do have the spring plate also from a 944, which gives you this wonderful little adjustment right here that allows you to raise or lower it from the outside of the car. I also put the torsion bars in from the 944. They're a whole lot stiffer, and apparently it makes a huge difference. This is according to what I've read. I'm hoping I'm right. A huge difference for a Beetle, which of course has a rear-mounted engine. It could use a stronger and stiffer torsion bar in the rear. So anyway, all this bolted directly in. There was only a few things that needed to be modified, and that was the bushing way up under there at the end of the arm. You can see it is red. That bushing needed to be replaced. Porsche 944 actually uses a tiny little bolt, but IRS Beetle uses a much bigger bolt. So I put that together with a Beetle bushing, which surprisingly pressed right into the arm, and assembled the whole sucker as you see right here. Now what I need to do is I need to put some longer lug studs on here, so I'm going to press these suckers out, reassemble the wheel, and we're going to see how this thing looks. And if all of my calculations are correct, this thing should have the wheel pushed out to the correct location from where it was when it was stock. So I'm trying to make this car look like it was, well, like it was factory from Volkswagen. Check out the length of those studs. That's pretty gnarly. Alright, what we got to do next is we got to mount the rotor on there. These are aftermarket rotors from a 911 actually. On there, and I think this should line up with the retaining screws for the rotor. It's always a pain to do this one-handed. You should see me operate a computer one-handed. Alright, I'm just going to cinch these up because this is going to be taken apart again. I'm not going to put the caliper on there today either. Take our spacer, slide that right on there. Now the lugs look more regular, but I think this wheel is going to fit on there the way I anticipated. I think I did the math correctly. I can already tell that that's about where I want it to be. Go ahead and slip some lug studs on there, get this thing cinched up, and we'll have a look at it again in just a minute. All right. We've got that sucker on there, and that spacing looks really good. Let's go ahead and lower it on the ground and have a walk around. Well, I'm going to call that a success. It doesn't look stupid anymore. That was just an enormous change. Enormous change. I pushed that wheel out about 4.5 inches, a little less than that, probably closer to about 4 1/8. But once I get the camber adjusted on this wheel, it's going to bring that top out a little bit, and I do want to clear that fender. I think I'm going to be just fine, really. But using these 928 wheels that I had on here, changing everything to a Porsche 5 lug was really a good idea. And even using that spacer was a good idea because at this point I can fit on all kinds of aftermarket Porsche rims that come in all different sizes. And I could even remove the spacer if I have something else that's of a different size or a different offset, and everything should still fit just fine. So by comparison, you see how cool this looks. And on this side, look how sucked in that is. Way too sucked in. So anyway, I think I nailed it. I'm going to do the same on the other side. And then once this is figured out, then I got to figure out what I'm going to do with the front. I think the front's got to come out about 1 inch or so. Probably no more than 1 inch, maybe even a little less than that. Maybe 1/2 to 3/4. But I got to do some measurements in there to get that right. It might look like there's not even 1 inch of space in there. That's because the wheel's turned a little bit. So, of course, I won't be driving it while it's that low anyway. We'll have an adjustable suspension on there, and as I mentioned before, I'm not going to go with air, I'm not going to go with hydraulics, and I'm not going to go with static. I'm going to build some kind of mechanical, motorized electric beam to adjust the ride height front and rear. I've got some drawings that I've come up with, and I'll start putting them in the real world and see how that works out, but I think I nailed it. That sets the rear the way I wanted it. From the rear, it looks a little odd with that wheel kicked way out to the right. But as you can see, the one on the left is pushed in too far. But definitely on the right, we might want to consider some wider wheels and tires in the future. But running around with what's going to be a stock engine in this early on, I'm not going to want to have such wide wheels and tires. So it's just going to eat a lot of fuel, and it's going to have difficulty pushing them because it's just going to be too big, too heavy, and too much friction on the road surface. I bet you it'll handle real nice though, but we'll get into that later. Meanwhile, that's what we got for now. So thanks you guys for watching. Hope you subscribed. Check out my other channel, VV the Duck VV, and Skeeter the Duck. Thanks for watching.